The study of Mark with the challenge of letting Jesus reveal who God is. We have taken the challenge of not reading into the Scripture who we think God is, but allowing Him to reveal who He is to us. There's been some things in Mark that have been pretty consistent. One is the word amazed. People are amazed. The disciples are amazed. The crowds are amazed. Everybody, at one point, Jesus is amazed at their unbelief. It's kind of a recurring theme. Now we're at the last part of Jesus' life. We're entering that last part of the trial. A couple weeks ago, we saw how the religious leaders, have been pushed by Jesus, have condemned Him. They had no other choice but to condemn Him. But to do that, they broke all the rules they had, all of their ideals. They went against everything they believed in order to condemn Jesus. And Jesus let them. He was the one in charge. Last week we talked about Peter and the low point in Peter's life where he saw the love in Jesus' eyes. We talked about how we needed to do that. We need to be able to see the love in Jesus' eyes so we could break down the way that Peter broke down. This week we're going to look at the trial before Pilate. In chapter 15, verse 1, it says, "Very early in the morning, the chief priest with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin reached a decision. They bound Jesus, led Him away, and handed Him over to Pilate." You guys remember who Pilate is? He's a Roman governor. Why did they have to go through Pilate? Because they couldn't lawfully kill anybody. The Romans decided that we're not going to let you guys do that anymore. So, they had to go to talk to the Romans. Now, were the Romans adverse to killing people? Yeah, it's kind of like an everyday thing. Yeah, okay, another crucifixion, that's all right. And what do they kill people for? Just about anything. The two people who are going to be crucified next to Jesus were thieves. They stole things. Romans killed them. Yeah, Romans killing. You notice they bound Jesus. They're so concerned about Him. You know, He's so rebellious and wanting to escape. They bound Him and led Him to Pilate. Now, if we put all the stories together in all the Gospels, it becomes pretty interesting because they couldn't go in to seek Pilate because they would be going into a Gentile's residence and then there would not be clean for the Sabbath, for the Holy Week, for the Passover. So Pilate came out to see them. He made that, you know, he made that little sacrifice. I know you guys got this thing going with the Passover. I'll come out and see you. So anyway, they led him over to him and he says, "Are you the King of the Jews?" asked Pilate. Mark says, "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. Yeah. Now, if you read the other gospel accounts, this is much further into the interrogation. And Pilate keeps saying things like, "What are all these things they're accusing you of? And are you really the King of the Jews?" And finally Jesus says, "Yeah, but my kingdom is not of this world." That's in John. But Mark kind of shortens the whole thing. He says, "Are you King of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say." The chief priest accused Him of many things. So again, Pilate asked Him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of?" But Jesus still made no reply. And Pilate was amazed. Here's a man who could answer any of these accusations, because they were pretty flimsy accusations. Matter of fact, when they accused Him before Pilate, it had nothing to do with the temple. Remember what they condemned Him to death for 2 weeks ago? For saying that He was going to tear down the temple? Right? It had nothing to do with the temple. In John, it says that they were saying He is inciting rebellion against Caesar. He's not allowing us to pay taxes. All of the things that they thought Pilate would want to hear. And Jesus didn't answer any of them. And Pilate was amazed. Matter of fact, in Luke he says, "Don't you realize the authority I have over you?" And Jesus says, "Well, no, you don't really. You don't." Pilate was not in control here. You know who was in control? It was Jesus. Jesus is going to make this thing happen. Is it Pilate's fault it happened? Matter of fact, the picture you get of Pilate, he tried every which way to get out of this thing. He finds out that Jesus is from Galilee. He says, "Oh, good, I'll send you to Herod." And Herod sends him back. He goes, "Great. Great." Matter of fact, the text says in verse 6, he says, "Now it was the custom of the feast to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man named Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did." Now, the other gospel said it was the other way around. That Pilate got this idea, okay, I can get the crowd to release him. The crowd can release him. So he puts him out in front of him and says, "Okay, which one do you want? Do you want this Barabbas who's a murderer, or do you want Jesus, the King of the Jews?" One point in Matthew it says that Pilate's wife sent him a message. It says, "Don't have anything to do with this man because I suffered terribly in dreams because of him." Pilate's in a serious situation. He's in a rock and a hard place, okay? You know what he wants to do? He wants to let Jesus go. But they won't let him. And Jesus isn't helping at all. It says here, he says, "Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of envy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. Do you know how you get to become a governor in Rome? You have to be very politically astute. You had to play all the politics in Rome. Pilate knew about politics, and you know what he saw in this situation? These people are jealous of Jesus. That's what this is about. And he still couldn't get Jesus to help him out. Jesus is going to make this thing happen. Is it Pilate's fault? No. We love to hate Pilate, don't we? How many of us name our kids Pilate? You probably don't even name your dog Pilate, do you? No. It just the name just kind of went out of favor somewhere. Yeah, or Herod. Pilate tried everything he could to get out of the situation. Now, granted, it was a Roman. I'll just have him flogged. That'll be enough for him. Now, flogging just about kills people. But as opposed to crucifixion, okay, you can choose between flogging and crucifixion. He says, "What shall I do then with the one you call the King of the Jews?" Oh, I'm sorry. Chief priests had handed Jesus over to him, but the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. In enters other characters in this scene. The crowd. And the crowd is who I want you to think about. Who is the crowd? This is the feast of the Passover. If you could at any time in your life make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the Passover, you were supposed to do that. It was one of the 3 required feasts in the Old Testament that was called worship. That was the only thing